What's up? It's Riccio and Janda. And you know what, Randip? The Canucks are back and they are playing. And the door is kind of open for a chance at the playoffs. I mean, look at the numbers. They have 5 games in hand on the Montreal Canadiens as we currently sit on this Tuesday. And now they are just 10 points back. So you can kind of make up the numbers. 18% chance they're up to make the playoffs. Is the door open for a miraculous run to the playoffs for the Vancouver Canucks?
Dan, so you're saying there's a chance. All right, the door is open, but it's like open this much. And it really comes down to how much do you believe in this team to really, go into this grind, which they're going to play 18 games in 30 days. How much can you expect from this team? The first game against Toronto, that was all adrenaline. That was heart. That was soul. But come on, can we expect a similar response from the Canucks down the stretch? That January and February that they had was putrid. Can you bounce back from that? I am still skeptical. This is a no from me, dog. But there is a chance. The door is open. Just that much. Just like literally that much.
If Braden Holtby keeps playing like Dominic Hasek the way he did the other night, maybe they get a few calls to go their way like they did the other night too. I don't know. You can start to see that there's a chance here. Look, it's a long shot. The long shot of all long shots. But, this is a lot about Montreal as well. They are not playing well. Are they going to call up Cole Caulfield? What's going to happen there? They can't score goals. It's the same old story with the Montreal Canadiens. So they've got to figure out those things. And until they do, the Canucks are going to have that chance. Now, you look at the schedule, and I think one thing that you obviously pointed out, that I pointed out when we were talking about it on the People's Show with Sportsnet 650, it's those last 3 games against Calgary. They are beyond the playoffs for, every other teams are done in the league when those 3 games against Calgary happen. Can the Canucks make those games relevant? Because if they're not, there's a chance that they just don't play them. But do they go on enough of a run that they end up playing out the whole 56-game schedule? That's really on the table right now.
Well, in the short term, you have to take care of business against the Ottawa Senators, a much improved Ottawa Senators than the Canucks saw earlier on in the year. Listen, ask Calgary how difficult the team that is to play. Ask Montreal. They've had their, bad luck against the Ottawa Senators as well. But beyond that, those games after that, at the end of April, at the beginning of March, you've got the Maple Leafs, you've got the Oilers, and you've got the Jets. So even in the short term, if you take care of business, this is going to be a tough situation for the Canucks. But the biggest factor here is obviously the Canucks picking up points, the Canucks doing their job. It's going to be tough. Teams coming off of COVID, let's remember that. The biggest outbreak in the NHL this year, and it wasn't particularly close compared to other teams when you remember that a variant was in play here. But the other thing, Dan, is you have to make sure that Montreal and Calgary continue to slip. While the Canucks weren't playing from March 24th, basically up until this week, the Montreal Canadiens were a sub-500 team. So were the Calgary Flames. You need that from them going forward as well. And the fact that Montreal can't score, the fact that Calgary has no confidence in every post-game show, Daryl Sutter is calling out his guys, essentially low-key implying that some of these guys are going to get traded in the offseason. That sets up well for the Canucks, but they got to take care of business as well. And that's going to be tough. Look at the numbers. And I think the most optimistic playoff odds give them an 18% chance. That's the most optimistic. Others are saying 5%. So as much as I want to drink the Kool-Aid on this, I can't.
Well, you know me. I always got a Spro going. It makes me feel good. It makes me happy. And it gives me some positive vibes. And that's kind of where I'm at right now with the Canucks. I think there's, because of what we've seen in the Canadian division, there is that door open. Now, the one thing that is working against them, and look, this has been a really difficult situation for a lot of the Canucks. So they've been through a lot over the last few weeks. A lot of the guys were hit hard. That we know from Elliot Friedman's reporting that there was not a lot of good vibes going through what happened, and even coming out of it with how JT Miller spoke out last week and all those things. And even coming back now, you look at the other teams that have gone through significant outbreaks. Philadelphia definitely haven't lived up to expectations this year with the way that they've played, under 500 since they came back from their COVID outbreak, and their goal difference since they came back is like in the negative 30s, I believe. Buffalo is already eliminated from the playoffs. They had the 18-game losing streak after their COVID outbreak. We know how difficult it's been for them. And New Jersey, same thing. They've been really poor. Now, those teams were expected to be at the bottom of the standings, or at least closer to, but Philadelphia, nobody expected this out of Philadelphia this year. And across, sports, we've seen it in basketball. Look at the Raptors, how they, kind of really struggled coming out of their COVID outbreak as well. So it would be a bit unprecedented to see the Canucks not just, win some hockey games here, but win a majority of their hockey games.
Yeah, the situation is a difficult one. Remember that now with a really condensed schedule with 18 games in pretty much 30 days, you're probably going to have a greater risk of injury. And I know we don't want to think about that, Dan, but that's anytime you're packing in games into a schedule like that, there's that risk. Even in the NBA, they've talked about how that has created soft tissue injuries. So that's one thing you got to watch out for as well. And the other thing, we haven't even mentioned this, the Canucks are without their best player. Elias Pettersson's not a part of this team as of right now. He has a wrist injury. You've seen him in the cast. To a certain extent, there's doubts of whether he even comes back this year. It seems like it's a good chance that he may not. So you're going to do this on a condensed schedule. And beyond that, Dan, recovering from COVID without your best player, it's going to be extremely difficult for this team. There's a lot the Canucks can show down the stretch. I think there's some positivity to take from what this team potentially could do. But yeah, the expectations, I think they're still quite low.
Yeah, and we saw at the deadline, they move Adam Gaudette, they bring in Madison Bowie, they bring in Highmore. So there's some new players coming in as well. Travis Boyd, Jimmy Vesey, or waiver pickups. I think the Canucks are looking at those guys. Can they be pieces for next year as they look to fill out their bottom six with some more cost-effective talent and that sort of thing? Take some chances on some players. What do you want to see from the Canucks? We know the playoffs are a long shot, but what do we want to see from them closing out this season?
On the ice, I'll focus on the ice. To me, it's about some of those those periphery players right now, those players on ELCs. They're going to get a chance to play now with this COVID outbreak, and players slowly coming back. Eventually, they're probably going to take some nights off. There might be rest days involved. This is an opportunity for some of those guys that you mentioned that were brought in via trades, but even other players on the Canucks roster that could feature next season. I'm looking at Ole Levy, a first-round pick a few years back. You have another young player in Cole Lind. Jack Rathbone is a player that they picked up as well, and he's a high-flying young defenseman. This is going to be an opportunity for them down the stretch to show what they can do and kind of have a pre-training camp audition to say, hey, I feature in these plans quicker than you think. And this is an opportunity for a lot of those guys to show that maybe they're not stars, but what do successful teams need? They need players further down the lineup that provide value. And a few of these guys that the Canucks have can be that, potentially. They just got to show down the stretch that they're NHL players as early as maybe next year.
Well, Jack Rathbone is going to be a really interesting piece. The Canucks are relying a lot on Vasily Podkolzin and Jack Rathbone. They're two big-time prospects. Rathbone is going to get into some games here. What does he look like? Is he a succession plan for Alex Edler, who's, coming up as an unrestricted free agent? There's a lot of question marks there that need to be answered. Going to be great to see if the Canucks can do that. And, the other big question mark comes off the ice. It's Elliot Friedman, again, going back to what he said on Hockey Night in Canada headlines. There is, not the best of relationship right now. Some fences need to be mended when it comes to the players and the organization about how this has all gone down. And you have a coach out of contract at the end of the year with Travis Green as well. So there's going to be a lot of that focus when it comes to the end of the year, but there's some things that have to happen on the ice to give you some hope for the Canucks moving forward as well.
And some of those, players that we talked about are going to, maybe they can get back into the playoff race. Sure, it'd be a miracle if they did. But who's going to motivate them? Who's the individual in charge of that? It's Travis Green, and he's the biggest question mark in Vancouver right now. Is he back in Vancouver, or does he go elsewhere? Because I can guarantee you one thing: anybody you talk to in the NHL says Travis Green's got a great reputation around the league. If Vancouver doesn't sign him, somebody else will.
Is he Seattle Kraken, maybe?
Yeah,
just a thought.
I'm just Anaheim. Where does Travis Green live in the offseason? In the OC? If Anaheim,
Travis Green, Rod Brindamore, like these are the two biggest coaching names on the free agent list this summer. It's going to be interesting. So a lot of questions for Vancouver to answer. What do you think? Can they make that miracle run to the playoffs? Doors a little bit open. It's going to take some work. Can they do it? Let us know in the comments. Like, subscribe, leave a review. We do appreciate it all the time. We'll be back next week. Dan Riccio and Randip Janda.